Hello and welcome to the Joe Ligato Show. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Ligato, and today we're going to be reviewing a thread on how a poll sponsored by Harvard pushed a Zionist narrative, and this is by Propaganda & Co. So if you find this to be informative, please subscribe, follow this person's channel. Looks like I'm not following them, so I'm now following them. So Propaganda & Co. And so I have a doctorate in industrial and organizational psychology, and so I have a specialization in this type of quantitative methods in research design, in questionnaire design, psychometrics, all of those topics. I'm a very quant-heavy person, so understanding how this poll is conducted and how questions are framed is really my area of expertise above nearly anything else. And so let's see what they did to manipulate this poll that is illegitimate. Okay, so the poll was supervised by Mark Penn, who's openly pro-Israel. Okay, so just initially, if you have a Zionist in charge of the poll, they're going to want to push a specific narrative. And so that type of conflict of interest should be avoided at all costs, or if it can't be avoided, it should be explicitly clear, which I'm sure was not the case in this instance. So let's see what Mark Penn believes. He believes there should be no division on supporting Israel. Okay, so we have a tweet from him now. It's a time for Democrats and Republicans to get together to condemn anti-Semitism and affirm support for Israel. There should be no division on this, only unity. Okay, so a couple things to say here. One is this person, as a researcher putting together questionnaires, does something you're not supposed to do, and he should be scolded for this, which is that he's putting together anti-Semitism and a lack of support for Israel. Okay, so anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, that's not correct. You can be anti-Zionist without being anti-Semitic. Okay? And so we look at things like the convergent validity, the discriminant validity. Do these constructs, are they related to other constructs differentially? Okay? So the fact that he's saying these two things are the same without really providing any sort of supporting evidence for that is a big no-no and shows that he's an activist and not actually a researcher here. So having this type of person in charge of a poll like this is also obviously a bad thing. Okay, so let's see how the poll presents things. So there's a way of framing a question, so it's kind of value neutral, so you can tap into what the people really think. And then there's ways of framing it such that you're trying to push a certain narrative. And let's see what this person, Mark Penn, does here. So the poll presents the conflict as Israel-Hamas rather than using the terms Israel-Palestine. This is called framing bias. Yes, Propaganda & Co. is absolutely correct here. That is called framing bias. And so it talks about, in this conflict, do you support more Israel or more Hamas? What? That's a weird way of framing it to begin with. It should be, in this conflict, do you support Israel or Hamas more? Israel, more Hamas. This person apparently does not know the English language on top of framing things in a very biased way that is pro-Israel. So, and obviously, if we are trying to remove all the bias and not just correct his weird phrasing of the sentence, we would say, in this conflict, do you support Israel or Palestine more? Okay? And so it says, at the younger ages, oh, that's funny because they tried to frame it so that you were forced to support Israel because Hamas is considered a terrorist organization in the West. But you actually see in the 18 to 24-year-old demographic, 50% still support Hamas over Israel. I'm sure that would go up if they were talking about, do you support Palestine or Israel? But 50% of young people actually support Hamas. In my age demographic, 25 to 34, 31% support Hamas over Israel. If we're talking about just objective reality, looking at the amount of war crimes each have committed, there's far more war crimes that have evidence backing them up when it comes to Israel committing war crimes versus Hamas committing war crimes. And so, yeah, I mean, the moral thing to do is support the people who are committing fewer war crimes. I've talked about this in other videos, but I disagree with Hamas and their role in the sectarian conflict in Syria and how they fought against the Syrian government. I disagree with that. But when it comes to objective reality, how they are conducting themselves in the current conflict starting on October 7th, there's no doubt in my mind that we've gone zero evidence, absolutely zero evidence that Hamas did something that would be considered a war crime. There's just rumors being spread without any evidence. Things have been refuted on it. Every time something comes out from Israel, it's been refuted so far. So there's been zero evidence of Hamas committing war crimes. There's been a ton of evidence, and Israel's even admitted it directly that they're committing war crimes. So I don't understand how anyone could support Israel over Palestine. I don't even understand how people could support Israel over Hamas directly, given the amount of war crime data that we have collected on both sides, where it's very clear that Hamas is committing fewer war crimes in this conflict. And remember, the conflict didn't truly start on October 7th. It started before that. But even if we're looking from October 7th and on, it looks like Israel has, just running the numbers, committed far more war crimes. So let's see what else we have here. Oh, well, I guess another interesting thing is 65 plus demographic. It doesn't matter how much genocide Israel commits. It doesn't matter if they talk about it openly. It doesn't matter if they're murdering children. The 65 plus demographic, the baby boomers, they are so completely indoctrinated with Israel support. It's just wild. Here we see 96% of 65 plus support Israel over Hamas, and that does not align with objective reality. I'm sorry. So now we see Propaganda & Co. saying the number of times something is mentioned in the poll: Hamas 98 times, Israel 75 times, Palestine 31 times. So it's very clear that they're trying to frame this in a certain way that is Hamas related and not Palestine related. Okay. So young voters are refusing to choose Israel over Hamas or Palestine. And Mark Penn, being the activist he is instead of the scientist, says that after publishing this poll, Mark Penn condemned the youth as misguided instead of condemning himself as being an activist instead of a objective scientist. So in his opinion piece, which was written by him and Andrew Stein, who is also a Zionist, they say our youth are misguided, not evil. They've been taught lies about Israel and Hamas. Okay, so I don't think they've been taught lies. If you just look at objective reality, if you compare what Hamas is doing and what Israel is doing, it's very clear what the correct answer is, what the correct side is in this. And so Propaganda & Co. says you can check out the Harvard-Harris poll yourself if you want at the link attached. I would recommend checking out this entire Twitter thread, following Propaganda & Co., et cetera, and they have a meme here. Are you pro-democracy and Israeli bombing, or do you sympathize with Palestinians and terrorism? So you can see the association going on, and this is clearly what happened in this poll by Mark Penn. And we see that pro-Israel media is working to spread this propaganda. You see the Times of Israel, National Review, New York Post, Hindustan Times. They're all saying how misguided, how evil the young Americans are. And so Propaganda & Co. says the poll was more about demonizing support for Palestinians than being a genuine survey. Yeah, and I would completely agree with that, given what we saw of the wording, of the framing of this poll. Israel relies on mainstream media and censorship to stump the truth, and young Americans aren't buying it. And that's the thing. They need censorship at this point because the truth is getting out there. So that is what I'll leave you with today. If you found this to be helpful, informative, interesting, please give us a thumbs up. It does help us in the algorithm. Please subscribe to our channel for more content on YouTube and Rumble. It's taking a little bit of time for things to sync on Rumble, but it happens eventually. And so that's kind of my backup. And if we ever get a lot of traction on Rumble, I might just pivot entirely to Rumble just to talk more openly about things, because there are taboo topics that we're not allowed to talk about on YouTube. Please leave us a comment in the comment box below. Questions, concerns, critiques. I do read all of them. I do respond when it seems like it's necessary. And tell a friend about our channel. We are obviously being suppressed in the algorithm. We are getting something like 20% impression click-through rate, which is far exceeding the average when it comes to geopolitics videos, but we are being suppressed in the algorithm. And so if you have any friends who might be interested in this type of content, please let them know about our channel, and we would love to have them here. Word of mouth does help us, and we do appreciate you for doing that. So thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.